This is Rich Horace. I'm the Elastic LA organizer. Welcome to the Elastic LA virtual meetup. Talking tonight about getting started with Elastic Cloud and on Kubernetes.
Hello.
All right, and then our so agenda for tonight. We'll just I'll talk a little bit about community news. We'll do a quick introduction for Shubha on the about her experiences, and then we'll dive into her presentation of getting started with Elastic Cloud on Kubernetes. And then we'll wrap up with question and answers. So let's talk a little bit about the community. So definitely get involved. It's a pretty vibrant community. Even with this last year, everyone thinks everything being remote, but we still have the Elastic meetups like we have today. I encourage you to check out the Elastic Slack community. Very, very active there. Also, not on this is the discuss forums where you can ask questions and get additional answers. And also there's a YouTube channel that is pretty much new content every weekday. There's something new. And speaking of content, there was something yesterday from Jay Miller, the developer advocate, talking about the Elastic Community Conference 2022. I don't think it's been officially announced on the site, but they do have, we're doing a call for proposals, and the call for proposals will be through December 24th, starting now. And here's the link to get to it. And the conference will be on February 11th and 12th. And if you go to the YouTube channel and look at Jay, you'll see, find Jay. They talk of him and Philip, another developer advocate, discuss how to tips and how to get a proposal in. And this is, it's community based, a little different than the official global Elastic conference from a few months ago. But I encourage you with anything, if you're active on Elastic Stack or doing any part of their products, I guarantee you know more than what you think you do. And it's nice when you have solved a problem that you would like to share and be able to share it with the community, because one small thing for you might be a very huge thing for another company to kind of go through. And the talks will be, the schedule for this will be 30-minute talks, and there's light talks to be about 7 minutes, and then the longer talks to be a format of 25 minutes. So definitely check it out. The official announcement will be coming out, but definitely if you're on the YouTube channel, you'll definitely see it. And all right, speaker spotlight. Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can actually see Shubha. There you are. All right. Let me stop sharing. Okay. So this talk is about 5 months in the making. I am, as a community organizer, I need to be pretty persistent. And I did reach out to one of my other contacts at Elastic. Well, hey, do you want to do another Kubernetes talk? And she pointed me to Shiba. And the summer was a little bit crazy time, and we kind of went back and forth. And now she will be doing her most like her last official talk from California, correct?
Yes, it's my first and last actually in the community event. But yeah, I'm very happy to be here because we
Yeah,
squeezed it in right before I make a move.
yeah. And she just celebrated 2 years at Elastic. So, Shiba, why don't you just kind of explain your experience so far at Elastic and a little bit about your background from how you made it to be the project manager around the Kubernetes project?
Yeah, so I mean, I've had a very long career in technology by some standards. I've been in technology for about 15 years. I started off as an engineer, writing security protocol implementations, but then, somewhere along the way, when came into product management and have done product management for about 10 years across consumer tech and SaaS and enterprise tech. But for the last 4 years or so, I've been in companies that sort of have their origins in the open source world. So I was a product manager at Cloud Foundry. at Pivotal right before I came to Elastic, and I worked pretty closely on actually ripping out one of our routers or proxies in Cloud Foundry and looking at Istio and Envoy as options, which is when I started actually getting my hands dirty in the Kubernetes community. And this was about 4 years ago. And I came to Elastic from Pivotal, and I was actually hired for some of our networking aspects on Elastic Cloud, and I from there I sort of expanded into orchestration, and Elastic Cloud on Kubernetes is a very important part of our options that we have on orchestration as far as our stack is concerned. So that's how I basically became the product manager on the Elastic Cloud and Kubernetes team.
Uh, and then from did you start off in that, or how? What was your first couple of projects, or first project that you got as you came into
Yeah,
Elastic?
so I've done a lot of, I've done a lot of projects or, released a lot of features at Elastic. Some of them are really in our sort of hosted managed offering, which is Elastic Search Service. And Private Link is one of those. So I've been pretty focused around the areas of security and enterprise readiness for our product. So private link, which is sort of this construct in the cloud world of how you connect securely from a network in that is running, one network that's running in the cloud and another network that is ours in another account. So how do you connect securely between those two? And it's become sort of a very common pattern for SaaS providers to be able to expose their services in a secure way, especially like in the data world. So yeah, that was a huge, undertaking. We've released Private Link across AWS, Azure, and GCP now for Elasticsearch Service. And now I'm actually more focused on improving the deployment health experience on Elastic Cloud. So there's just a sort of wide variety of projects that we have at Elastic, and like I've sort of, because of my experience, I've also been pretty involved in um, Elastic Cloud and Kubernetes, which is one of the products that has a basic version which is open and free, and we also have an enterprise version of it. But it really like keeps me sort of grounded also in the open source community. So I think that's sort of how I've um, all the things I've been involved in, which is quite a few.
And plus the pretty much every 6 weeks a new feature release coming out, definitely keeping you
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah, so our cadence of release actually every 3 months on our ECK, ECE, all the stack
Okay.
products as well. But actually we release on our SaaS product every 3 weeks. So we have a much more sort of our cadence on the SaaS side is even higher than what you see on the self-managed offerings.
Yeah, I have my own challenges of trying to keep up, and it's you know, this, and I mean with containers, with the cloud, it is making it easier to do things and experiment and test. So with that, why don't I hand this over to you and let you jump into your presentation? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm going to share my screen. Um, Cool. You all should be seeing my screen now. Can one of you just confirm that you are seeing my screen? Because
Yep, all good.
okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, so thanks, Rick, for that introduction. So my the agenda is going to be pretty simple. I'm going to start. This is a very beginner-friendly session, so I'll start with a general introduction to Elastic and sort of give you a sense of where Elastic Cloud and Kubernetes falls in that bigger picture, and then go into what Elastic's journey has been on Kubernetes, and why did we even go down the path of like launching ECK. It's one of our younger or like one of our more recent products, right? It's been in GA for about a couple of years now. So it's not very recent, but it is one of our more recent products. And the Kubernetes community itself is pretty young yet, but it's maturing, but it's still pretty young. So I'll just go into why did we write ECK, what is ECK, and I'll also talk about some of the adoption metrics, because like I said, it's been around for 2 years, and I wouldn't be a good product manager if I didn't I wasn't looking at the metrics and not looking at, like, who's using the product or not. So I'll also share some of the metrics around how the product is being used, because I think that's one of the sort of largest parts of building confidence in the community around, is this ready for production use cases and so on. And then get into a demo, and I'll do a pretty basic demo of installing the operator and installing an elasticsearch cluster and a kibana. And I'll also go into a few like more advanced use cases of updating a cluster and setting up stack monitoring. So yeah, like that's the basic gist of what I'm going to do. um, I'll start with an introduction, right, of what Elastic is for those who might be absolutely new. Most people, like, I think the most popular part of our product stack is this, the core of our stack, which is Elasticsearch, Kibana, and what used to be Logstash. And now, like, in addition to Logstash, all of the integrations we have in terms of beats and agent and so on. So Elasticsearch is sort of the data storage layer, Kibana is the visualization layer, and the integrations are in order to like collect and ship the metrics and logs and whatever security alerts, all sorts of great things to this data storage layer. And Kibana is so that you can visualize them. On top of these, now we have these out of the box solutions, right? Enterprise search, observability, and security. And observability is probably the most popular of those, but we also have enterprise search, which includes site search and app search, and we are also now in security. So we sort of combine all of these three solutions, like sit on top of this common stack and are powered by this common stack, which gives you, yeah, you store your data once and you can analyze it and in all sorts of different ways. And these out of the box solutions make it even easier to consume and integrate with your client apps or whatever use case you have in mind. Makes it much more easier to integrate. And then you can deploy it anywhere, right? So you have the public cloud option, which is our hosted managed offering, but then there is the hybrid and on-prem options, and this is where Elastic Cloud and Kubernetes sits. If you wanted to run Elasticsearch on Kubernetes, and let's say you're going from 1 to like 10 clusters over a period, or 1 to 100 clusters, you want an easy way to manage those clusters. This is where Elastic Cloud and Kubernetes comes into the picture. um, so that's sort of where it fits into the larger scheme of things for Elastic. But I also want to touch a little bit on our history with Kubernetes and our history with the sort of options we've had on Kubernetes, because Elastic Cloud on Kubernetes is not the first sort of thing we launched on Kubernetes, and it's not the only thing we have. K8s was released in 2015. It was still a pretty like there was still the whole orchestration wars going on. I still remember there was Mesos, there was Rancher. Like, people didn't know what was sort of going to be um, the the container orchestrator, right? And I think now we sort of have consensus, and we know that yes, Kubernetes is sort of emerging as the de facto container orchestrator. Lots of workloads are moving to Kubernetes, but that wasn't the case in 2015. But around 2017, we started like sort of seeing more and more of our community um, using Kubernetes as as an option, and we wanted to sort of give you an option to ship metrics and logs from Kubernetes. And that's when we introduced FileBeat and MetricBeat for K8s. And 2018, we actually introduced Helm charts, right? And today we have these open source Helm charts that you can use to install Elasticsearch, Kibana, all of our beats, all of our components on Kubernetes itself. And these Helm charts are also open source. I don't have a link to them here, but I'll make sure I add the link before I share the presentation. So yeah, we have Helm charts which are free and open to use. But we also realized that we didn't just want to have Helm charts. We also wanted to invest into an operator for those day two use cases where you have not just like a few clusters, but you actually, have tens or 20 or even more clusters, and you're actually doing a lot of those day two operations, right? But the time at which we introduced the Helm charts, the operator pattern was still sort of maturing. So we introduced the operator, which is a little bit more involved to write in 2019 and alpha and beta. And then in early 2020, we GA'd it, which is when ECK 1.0 was launched. And now, we have a 3-month release cadence like all the other stack components. Currently, we're on ECK 1.8. ECK 1.9 is going to be launched pretty soon. But essentially, like it follows the same release cadence as all of our other stack products as well. So I think this sort of talks a little bit to why we launched the operator, right? We had the Helm charts, and what are the like why would you write an operator, right? And I think the gist of that is that it's very similar to the all the challenges of running stateful applications in Kubernetes. It's not some of which is not specific to Elasticsearch, right? Elasticsearch is a stateful application, but running Elasticsearch on Kubernetes has its own set of challenges because of the way Kubernetes was written, right? Kubernetes was great for running stateless applications. That's sort of the first workloads. Even when we see customers moving workloads, we see that they first move their stateless workloads. We tell them that, hey, like Elasticsearch should not be the first application you're moving to Kubernetes. Like, if you moved a few stateful workloads, stateless workloads, um, and had some experience with running like some stateful applications which might not be mission critical on Kubernetes, then like try and move your stateful applications like Elasticsearch to Kubernetes. And it comes with all of those issues of running stateful applications, right? So you have to manage pods, nodes, services, which like is a general problem with Kubernetes. But also like storage is one of the like to me, I think one of the biggest questions that comes up all the time. Like, what sort of storage should I use? Should I use local? Should I use ephemeral? Should I use persistent storage? So managing storage on Kubernetes is hard. It's been solved by the community in some ways with persistent volume claims and in terms of storage classes and so on, but it's still not as easy with like container life cycles being ephemeral, right? So I think there are still gaps there, but it has gotten better. And then for an application like Elasticsearch, you need to make sure you maintain uptime and high availability. You want to be consistent in your security practices. So Elasticsearch should, talk to Kibana in a secure way. You want to make sure all of that is configured correctly, the certificates are configured, or the secrets are configured correctly. So there are these challenges of just running stateful applications on Kubernetes, and this is primarily why like we looked at the operator pattern, right? And this is just from the Kubernetes.io doc. What Elastic Cloud on Kubernetes is that it is an operator, right? And operators were conceived in the Kubernetes community as a way to capture like the knowledge that a human operator would have and what a human operator would do to be able to like upgrade an application or run an application in a way that it runs in high availability mode, and you don't lose access to your cluster and your data when you're trying to upgrade it and so on. And an operator tries to automate a lot of those constructs that a human being would have to do otherwise in a sort of sequenced way, which is what ECK is, right? ECK is basically the official operator from Elastic. And as you know, we are the creators of Elasticsearch. So we were probably positioned really well to write an operator that helps you manage Elasticsearch on Kubernetes. It's written, it's an operator. So it basically like extends the master API. We give you CRDs that you install, and these CRDs represent each of the resources. And I'll go into this when I do the demo as well. You'll see all of the CRDs. And then like once you have those CRDs and the operators, you can basically, it runs as a control loop, and continuously tries to match the desired state to the current state to the desired state, right? So that's basically, it's a custom controller that we've written. So with that, I won't go a little, I'll go into the adoption numbers, since I think I've talked a lot about like why we wrote it, what advantages you get with the operator. It basically helps you make your day to operations better. But essentially, like in terms of adoption, right? So I told you that we launched ECK in the beginning of 2020, which is about a year and year and 9 months now, and we've had more than 4,400 plus downloads. We have about 28,000 plus Elasticsearch clusters that are being managed by ECK, about 6,000 plus Kibana instances that are being managed. And in terms of the download distribution, so we have both a Helm chart and a YAML file for ECK, and we see that Helm charts have become quite popular. In fact, we launched the Helm charts just about I would think about 7 to 8 months ago, and now we get about 30% of our downloads from the Helm chart, which is pretty high. The rest of that, which doesn't add up to 100%, is from other sources. We also are on, operatorhub.io, which is a registry for operators. We also have like a presence on Operator Hub that you can have on Redshift, on the operator console. So we do have a few other channels, but they're very, very small as compared to our people who come to our site, download the YAML or go through the YAML, all the Helm chart. So we see a lot of downloads coming from the ECK Helm chart itself. And in terms of like deployment patterns, right? Like, how many clusters are people deploying using ECK and being managed by ECK? So this is a really interesting data point that I've been thinking about. That a lot of our users who use ECK actually have very few clusters. Like, majority of them are somewhere between like 1 to like 3 clusters or 4 clusters. But we also see some customers sort of using, or users using it for managing more than 10 clusters, some even using it to manage more than 100 clusters, right? So there are users who are right now using operator to manage over 100 clusters. And in fact, we saw a talk in Elasticon Global this year around managing 230 plus Elasticsearch clusters using the operator. And I've left a link to it here. It's also available online for anyone to listen to. So it's gated, but it you can, if you want to watch it, it's there for you to watch online. With that, actually, I can stop for questions, Rick, if there are questions before I go into the demo.
Hey, Shubha, it's Olivia. I don't see any questions just yet. If any pop up at the end, we can highlight them.
Sure. Cool. Yeah, so with that, I will go into a demo. Let me share my screen. So sharing my screen again. Cool. So the demo, I'm going to do a pretty basic demo, which is installing the operator, creating an Elasticsearch cluster. I'll do the version upgrade before I do the Kibana instance creation. And then I'll also just, I wanted to highlight a feature that we released not too long ago, which was about, I think, 3 to 6 months ago. But this is basically like how to ship your logs and metrics to a monitoring cluster. So if you wanted to set up stack monitoring, it makes it super, super simple. And it doesn't, if you're in an environment where you don't have elevated access to the cluster itself, it actually makes it really easy because we run FileBeat and MetricBeat as in the same pod as sidecar containers, and it makes it really easy to ship logs and metrics to a monitoring cluster. So this is the gist of my demo. I'm going to start. So yeah, let me just find my terminal. So I have a few terminal windows I've already set up. So yeah, these are my terminal windows. I actually don't have, I just have a GKE cluster, right? A Kubernetes cluster set up. But outside of that, I don't even have the operator installed. We have a really, really good getting started guide on our documentation page. So this is a shout out to all of those who want to get started. This is a great place to get started, and it actually walks you through the steps from the point of installing the operator to, like, creating your first sort of creating an Elasticsearch cluster and Kibana and all of that. So this is a shout out to our docs team. But I'm going to start with just, installing the operator. And it's what we've actually broken that step into two. We used to have one YAML, which was called the all-in-one YAML, but now we have the, CRDs YAML and the operator YAML. So the CRDs.YAML actually installs all the CRDs. So you can see here that, it's actually creating the Elasticsearch CRD, the Kibana CRD, as well as all of the others. So Beats, Agent, Elastic, Enterprise Search, and so on. You can modify this to only, if you only wanted Elasticsearch in Kibana, you can actually modify the crds.yaml and only install the resources you want. But I've just gone with the default and I'm just installing all of them. And then the operator install actually creates, all of the roles and all of the service accounts the operator needs to be able to, create a Elasticsearch instance and keep it updated and create a Kibana instance. So this does all of that. Um, so I've actually already installed my operator. It just took me a few seconds. And then the next step is for me to deploy an Elasticsearch cluster. I'm not going through this quick start. I'm not going to copy paste the quick start guide in this case, but I actually have something that's very similar on my machine. So this is just a YAML file, right? And what I'm telling my operator now to do when I apply this file is, hey, like I want to create this resource of type Elasticsearch, of kind Elasticsearch. The name of my cluster is Quick Start. I'm just creating one of version 7.14 so that I can also show you a major version upgrade. And then I'm telling it that I want one node of type master, one node of type data, and the name of those is also master and data. In this case, I'm assigning the data ingest and ML roles to that node. And in this case, I'm only assigning the master role to the node. So I'm not doing anything super complicated here on purpose. Like I don't have a PVC, I'm not doing storage, but as you get into more complicated cases, this is just a basic quick start, right? So I'm just going to like walk you through creating your first cluster on Kubernetes using ECK. So with that, I mean, it's as simple as applying this, right? And once I apply this, basically the operator is looking for any changes and it says, oh, like you want to create these resource. So I'm going to create this resource for you. So it'll basically compare this against the CRD and say, okay, like you wanted to create this resource, I'm going to create this resource for you. Now with this, I usually like to watch the pods being created. So let's just do that. So now you can see here that it's actually starting these two nodes. One is data, one is master. It's going to take a few seconds to actually create these, right? And as this goes through, let's also look at what would it take to do a version upgrade. So you all remember I used the quick start.yaml. I'm just going to modify that YAML now. So you saw this. Oh, go ahead.
Hey Shubha, is there any way you can increase the font size on your terminal?
Yeah. Is that?
Super.
Yeah.
Thank
Awesome.
you. We had a few comments. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah. So this is, I mean, I just increased it. I also want to, yeah. So I'm basically, I want to do a major version upgrade, right? I'm going to say, I want to go from 7.14 to 7.15. And I'm going to change my YAML to have 7.15 as the version here. And that's it. Like I'm not changing anything else because it's also against the best practice. Usually if you're doing a major version upgrade, like we say, okay, do a major version upgrade. And if you want to increase the number of nodes or so on, do it separately. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do the, like also upgrade the cluster on other parameters. So with this, I mean, you basically again do a, kubectl apply f quick start es.yaml. I'm applying the changes I just made. So it says, okay, it's configured. Now what you see happening on the left in my terminal where I'm actually looking at the pods, is that it's terminated the data pod. It's going to restart that data pod. It'll take care of like, if you're not using local volumes, it'll take care of like attaching the volume, attaching it once the pod or the node has started. Also, like, I mean, if you've set up your cluster to be HA, in my case, I haven't set it up to be HA and I haven't set it up with replicas. But if you have more than one master, it basically takes down one master at a time. So we do rolling upgrades by default, which is the best practice, by Elasticsearch. So the operator actually takes care of that for you, right? In this case, we've said, okay, I want to do the version upgrade, and the backend, the operator is making sure that we update one node at a time. And then if you have more than one master, it'll do one master at a time, so you never lose availability to your cluster. So that's, I mean, it's a major version upgrade. It's going to take a few seconds, and my cluster doesn't have a lot of data, so it doesn't take a very long time right now. But essentially, it's going through the major version upgrade right at this point. Now to, like, doing a Kibana instance, also creating a Kibana instance is also super simple, like I just showed you. So I'm going to do a quick Kibana instance before I do the monitoring example. But this is my Kibana instance, right? It's saying that I want to create a resource of kind Kibana. It is the name of the Kibana instance is Quick Start. It references the Elasticsearch cluster I just created. It says, okay, this is the Elasticsearch instance that this Kibana gets data from. And that's it. Like, the operator takes care of making sure the certificates are set up correctly. So Kibana and Elasticsearch like talk using TLS, like they don't use plain text HTTP. And the operator does that for you by default. So in this case, like, again, it's as simple as doing a kubectl apply f, quick start Kibana. And it should take a few seconds now for my Kibana instance to come on. You can see that my master is still down, so it's probably going to take a little bit longer for Kibana to come up. But are there any questions? Actually, I can take a few questions as this is happening.
I don't think there's any yet.
That's cool.
So
yeah.
Keep on going.
Yeah. So it takes a few seconds. Like, good thing for us to do maybe to watch the operator logs. And I like doing this to see if there is, an error or there's something else, because sometimes, like, when things are taking very long, I'm like, oh, I guess there's something going on. Like, am I seeing an error? So I saw this earlier too, but this resolves itself and Kibana does start. Uh, but I think this is because it's not able to reach Elasticsearch in the time that I've just restarted Elasticsearch. So it takes a little bit for once Elasticsearch comes up, it's able to get the right license and it basically starts up. But it does take a few seconds for the Kibana instance to come up. And what I wanted to highlight as this instance is coming up is also that we set up, so if you look at the docs as well, we actually set up a service and a cluster IP service for both Elasticsearch and Kibana. So you can actually access the service itself. Now my Kibana is still coming up, but I can show you this in, see, in Elasticsearch. If you do a get Elasticsearch, actually, it responds with the version number and the version number and like the name. But I'm also wondering if I actually didn't apply the changes I was making now. Let's look at that. Yes. Not going to apply this again. Let's actually do it's running. And now you see my Kibana instance coming up. So now as my Kibana instance is coming up, what I can start doing is I also wanted to show you how you'd connect to this service. And since I'm trying to connect from my local machine, I'm just going to do a port forwarding once the instance comes up. But you can see my instance is running now. And I am going to do a port forwarding here. And once I do this, I can access it from my local machine, but I just need the username and password that I need to use. So let's look at that. So to get the password, I'm just sort of looking at, so this gets me the password for my Kibana instance. And with this, I should be able to just log in to Kibana. So one thing I did notice is I don't see my major version upgrade going through. So I want to go back to that, but I'll just go through this once and then go back to that at the end. So now you have your Elasticsearch instance, you have Kibana, right? Now before I do the version upgrade, and I start troubleshooting it live here, I'm gonna just do the how do you set up a monitoring cluster to ship logs. And this is a super cool like feature that I wanted to highlight. We actually released this very recently. So you can see in our docs, if you go to our docs, it is under advanced topics, but I think it's actually not that advanced. And we built this feature because we got a lot of feedback from the community around it being super hard to configure monitoring, and also you needed to have if you're running beats, you do need to have elevated permissions on the clusters. So this is a good solution if you're looking for just stack monitoring and you do not have advanced permissions to the Kubernetes environment that you're running your cluster in. It basically, the way it works is that we install FileBeat and MetricBeat as sidecar containers in the same pod as your Elasticsearch and Kibana instance, and it makes it really, really like easy to ship those logs to the monitoring cluster. It's also super easy in terms of how the setting works. So let me show you how that looks like, right? How the YAML looks like. So in this case, like this is basically the YAML for shipping logs and metrics for a cluster to another cluster. And for those of you who like are you, I mean, for ECK, the YAML is sort of our user interface, right? It is what we say that, hey, ship, logs and metrics from uh, cluster A to this other cluster, which might be cluster B. So in this case, what I'm doing here, I've set up 3 namespaces A, B, and C, but I have a monitored cluster, which is called test in namespace A. And then I have another cluster to ship my metrics and logs to, which is in namespace B, and it's called M1. And you can ship your logs and metrics to the same cluster, or you can ship it to a different cluster. In this case, I'm just shipping it to the same cluster M1. And then I'm also setting up my Kibana for my test cluster and for my monitoring cluster, which is basically M1, right? And this is a basic, like this is pretty similar to what I just showed you in terms of creating the resources. This is not very different from creating the Elasticsearch cluster that I just showed you, except we've also added this field called monitoring. And you can say that, okay, I want to ship my metrics cluster to M1, I want metrics to M1, I want to ship my logs to M2 or M1. And it's pretty similar to the Elasticsearch cluster that I just created and I just showed you, but it just takes these additional parameters in terms of where do you want to ship the logs and metrics for this cluster to. So this is a basic sort of setup. And again, like it's as simple as, I don't want to do that. It's as simple as doing a kubectl apply again. YF, yeah, this is my. So in this case, now it'll create all the namespaces and create my clusters in the namespaces. So for me, I'm going to just watch kubectl get pods. And so this is creating it in specific namespaces, right? So you'll see that starts over a few seconds, but it'll start, basically it's creating my monitored clusters and my monitoring clusters right now. And as this goes through, let's just look at where my monitoring clusters are created. So I can also show you, log into that monitoring cluster and show you what that looks like. So let's just do a watch here so I know when this comes up. It takes a few seconds for, all of these clusters to come up. Yeah, I think as this does show me, so you can see that one of my masters has come up. So I'm hoping that this doesn't take too long. But in this case, I also just have, so now you know that I have all of my services set up. So like I said, we set up a service for you, cluster IP service. So it has an internal IP. I don't have a load balancer set up. So you see there is no external IP there. Again, now if I have to log into this, I just basically get the password to my Elasticsearch user. Did not copy the O. So I get the password to my Elasticsearch user. I just port forward, and then don't want to do it here actually. So as my services come up, just going to do a control C, port forward, and now I can log in to my monitoring cluster. So I can show you stack monitoring being set up like with a really, really easy setup. So let's do that. So yeah, so this is my cluster that I am shipping the metrics and logs to. And if you go to stack monitoring here, don't want to say my password. Remind me later. But you see that I can see what the overview of my cluster is on 715, which is strange because I thought it wasn't on 715. I got to do a kubectl get Elasticsearch again. Sorry, this is really, yeah. So I mean, I've noticed it takes a few seconds for the version upgrade to show up on the service, but it did actually upgrade. So it tells me that this cluster is of type 7 of version 715. It shows me like, it has two nodes, which is my two master nodes that I set it up with. It shows the indices. So stack monitoring is set up, and it's actually like receiving the logs and metrics, right? And it's showing me all of the data around those logs and metrics. And this is a feature that we added fairly recently. I don't remember the exact version that we added this in, but it makes configuring stack monitoring really, really simple for users who don't have elevated permissions to the Kubernetes cluster. So that's it. That was my demo. And
So there is a two-part question. I'm going to add it to the stream. So we have, my question is, what's the best use case for the ECK option? Followed by, why would one choose the ECK option over a managed service option when working with a cloud provider?
yeah, so maybe I'll just go into the first one, which is what is the best use case for ECK? That Cool. So the best use case for ECK. So I think the reason for to use ECK is that if your company or your team is looking to move to Kubernetes as a deployment option, right? And is looking to Kubernetes as the de facto container orchestrator. There is some sort of agreement on the team that, we want to move more and more applications to this common platform, then that is the best reason for you. And you use Elasticsearch already for one or more of your applications. It could be for search, it could be for observability, it could be for some other use case. And you're running, one to like hundreds of clusters, then ECK is a great option for you. It's basically I don't think it's a function of like, are you doing search, observability, or security? For any of those options, ECK is a great option for you. But the question is like, if your company wants to deploy on Kubernetes and you want an easier way to deploy and manage Elasticsearch clusters on Kubernetes, then ECK is a great option for you. And that's basically like, how to think about it. And then I think the second question was, why would one choose the ECK option over the managed service option when working with a cloud provider? That's a great question. So, it's really a comparison of like total cost of ownership, right? In terms of going with Elasticsearch service, which is a hosted managed offering from Elastic, or using ECK. So we have lots and lots of customers who want to stay self-managed, even if they are running on GKE or AKS or EKS, because their company has a mandate that they have to host it within their own VPC. It might be because of security reasons. It might be because they have these more stringent sort of infosec requirements. They might be in uh, it might be in environments where you might be in verticals like finance or healthcare, where you have very stringent requirements around like what data has to stay where. So there are like reasons why people choose ECK over the managed service. And it's usually like to do with security and like I want to run this in my own VPC. Is the same procedure using OpenShift. Correct. It is the same procedure using OpenShift. Like I said, we are on the OpenShift operator hub as well. And I think we also have, let me let me share my screen, or just give me a second. We also have documentation for OpenShift specifically. So if you look at our documentation page, you'll also see that we have documentation that's specific to OpenShift itself, in cases where there is some idiosyncrasy about OpenShift that we needed to take care of. But on the whole, yes, it is the same process, and I can also share my screen and show you. Sorry. Yeah, so we have like, deploying on OpenShift, most of the commands remain the same, but essentially, like if there is an idiosyncrasy, we actually have specific instructions for OpenShift. You can also, download us from the OpenShift operator hub. We are a certified operator, so we've gone through the process of building the operator on the UBI image, and like all of our images are certified. So we are a certified operator as well on the OpenShift operator hub. Yeah, so ECK is usage based, in that one ERU is basically an ERU is amount of RAM by 64. That is the calculation for an ERU. So we have two versions of the operator, right? We have the basic and we have the enterprise. The basic version of the operator is free and open to use. There's no like charge for it. So there's no ERU based license or node based license. In the case of the enterprise license, it is an ERU based license, but it is self reported. Like there is nothing in the operator that tells us, that X number of resources are being managed, and it's charged by the amount of RAM that is being managed. And one ERU is amount of RAM by 64. So it is ERU based in that sense.
I think that might be all of our questions.
Yeah, those were really good questions too. All right. Is anything, and no other questions in the chat? I didn't see anything else. So how what's the so from keeping up with Kubernetes itself? What's the? I know like Elasticsearch essentially is a version behind Lucene, right? It kind of keeps that cadence. How are you keeping up with Kubernetes from their version releases?
Yeah, so we basically test right on whatever is the latest Kubernetes version that's coming. If there are any breaking changes in terms of our dependencies, we make sure we update them with whatever release that is. But yeah, I mean, if you look at our support metrics, we actually keep up with every, like, if there is a latest version of Kubernetes coming, we test the operator against that version and update our support metrics to make sure that, hey, like, these are the versions we are testing on. So that's basically most of what we need to do. Of course, if there's something that changes in the underlying Kubernetes um, implementation itself, like, we need to make sure the operator is updated. And since we release every 3 months, it hasn't been an issue yet.
Perfect. I don't have anything else, and but great talk. I think you covered a lot, and you conquered the demo gods.
Yeah, it's easier when you're just on your machine, though.
Yeah. So,
Cool.
all right. Well, this is good luck on your move, and this is the last virtual meetup of 2021. Hopefully next year I'll be on site and actually doing these in person again. But thank you very much for taking time, and excellent presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you also, Olivia.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Bye.